What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show I'm about to be joined by my guest, Caroline Cory. Now Caroline is an award-winning filmmaker, futurist, and the visionary author of the best-selling books on consciousness science and mystical literature. Now as a child and throughout her life, Cory had numerous E.S.P, extrasensory and pre-cognition experiences, which led her to become deeply connected to the study of consciousness and the mechanics of the universe. Now she has taught energy medicine and consciousness work for over a decade, and she joins me today to discuss her latest documentary, Superhuman. Caroline Cory, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
You know, I've had a chance to watch your documentary. Well, documentary or film? Which one for this one?
It's a documentary.
Okay. Is there much difference between calling it a documentary and a film when it comes to something like that you've produced?
Well, a documentary is real life. We're not making things up. There is no storyline, you know, like a made up story. It is all real. So that's the difference. It is feature length though. So maybe that's why, you know, you can call it documentary film because it is.
It is. It's about 1 hour and 55 minutes. And I've got to say the production quality, that's what struck me on this one. It's really high.
Yes. You know, when I'm making a film, I want it to be a whole experience. Visually, I want it to be beautiful. I want the music to be very special, very different, to carry the message. So, I mean, that's why we're using this visual medium. Otherwise, I could just write a book about it. And so it's very important to me, and I think it came across. So thanks for saying that.
It does. I mean, you've made great use of stock footage in the interviews. You've done the interviews really well. I mean, how long did it take to film?
On and off, because we, you know, sometimes we have to schedule, because as you know, we filmed in Europe, and I think about 6 months, over 6 months. But the research took a long time. And then the edit, just the edit alone was about 5 months, I want to say, maybe more. We have about 2,500 edits in the film. So, yeah, so it's a lot. It's really a lot of work if you want to make it feel that way. People don't realize that you just watch a scene, you don't realize that every scene takes 3 hours to set up. So yeah, and then you cut like 5 minutes of that interview or
Right,
something.
okay, and people will get to see that when they watch it. Now, I'm linking this in the bottom of the description, and just for people on a podcast, the website for the documentary is
Superhumanfilm.com.
okay. Well, that's coming up on the screen as we speak as well. I mean, I'm sure it's okay to ask this, but how much did it budget to make something like this?
Over $350,000, which actually is not that much for that type of production value. Yeah, it's actually very, because like I said, the amount of edit, the quality of the interviews, as you saw. So it's all, I have a top-notch crew. And because I've worked with them in the past and we really enjoy working together, they kind of work with me in terms of, their fees and stuff like that. But in terms of filmmaking, for that caliber production, technically should be a lot more.
Wow. Well, yeah, it's always fascinating, and we'll get off this subject in just a second, but it's all part of it, I suppose. When you're sort of wanting to do something like that, and you've got to raise the funds as well. Now, I know you've got a company behind you, and we'll talk about what that company does in just a bit. So, was this privately funded, or?
Yeah, privately funded. So I've been in the field of consciousness for 20 years. So I've been lecturing and, doing all kinds of classes and workshops for a long time. So I have students and clients all over the world. And sometimes one of them would say, if there's anything I can do for you, and they happen to have a lot of money, and I just put it out there, and they volunteer to fund the film. And so that's kind of how it came about. And, sometimes when you change someone's life, when I work with someone, I don't mean to change their, I'm just doing my work. I'm who I am. But if they're struggling with something their entire life, and in one day that problem is resolved, and it's very important to them, they feel like they want to contribute. They want to be part of your effort. And so that's how it came about. I also put in my own funds as well, but mostly that's how it's
Beautiful.
been.
And what is the most important message of this documentary, would you say?
Well, I think the most important message is the empowerment for people to realize that, we've been hearing for years and years and years that the mind has an effect on the body. The mind creates your reality. Think positive and you feel better, your stress level. So we know the mind and consciousness has an effect. But it's to me, it seems like it's all talking, it's like I wanted to take it to the next level and not just rehash the same message, but demonstrate on camera that when you think of something, that thought has an actual measurable effect on the physical. So it has an effect on the water. It has an effect on a piece of paper you're trying to move. It has an effect when you're projecting your thought to remote viewing. It does have an effect. And in the film, I show how that is possible. And so I feel like this film, I've never seen that before in film format actually go to that level of demonstration, also with scientific experimentation. So because of this, I am really hoping that people will get the message and be empowered to not just think it's a concept out there, but this is a real thing. So now moving forward, every time I think, wait, it's affecting my body because I just demonstrated that I was able to change the pH in the water just by thinking about it. So that's what I'm hoping. It's a message of empowerment.
Yeah, and you show that beautifully in the documentary as well. I will say that, and as you say, not many documentaries show the kind of the cause and effect and the experiments that you did as well, and that was a really clever touch to it. So what do you think some of those experiments are teaching us, in a sense, that really, what we thinketh becometh, in a sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I wanted to choose experiments that people can relate to. So the first experiment was remote viewing, which in a way remotes to the idea that we think of someone remotely and all of a sudden they call, or a mother can see their kid on the other side of the planet, that something's wrong with him, and she knows because she just kind of saw it somewhere, somehow. So we all have these types of experiences, but we don't know. So either we call it synchronicity or intuition. So I wanted to do this experiment that is a real science, actually, remote viewing, because it was used in the government. So that experiment live on camera showed how one person could tap into the consciousness of another and pick up all sorts of information. So that was an important one. Another one was the pH in water, because, you go to the stores and you see all these bottles of water with 8+ pH and 7+ and 9+, and they sell it to you for $7, or, because we know that a higher pH alkaline body helps you of the viruses and the bacteria cannot survive in this type of environment. So I wanted to demonstrate that with your intention, you can literally change the pH in water. And because we are made of water, that means you could do it to yourself. Their experiment, of course, the telekinesis, just because, people think about that, they want to bend spoons, they want to move objects with their mind. It sounds so sexy, like a sci-fi, like movie, but that only superheroes get to do. And I wanted to show that, no, this is possible. This is real. And so, and again, if you're able to move an object with your mind, it means your mind has a measurable effect. So that's how I selected the experiments in the film, so people can relate them to their life and say, wait, if you could do this, then I could do that, And of course, the blindfolds at the end. I hope you enjoyed that section with the kids with the blindfold.
Well, yeah. And did you, when you filmed internationally, was that because of some guests were obviously international and it was just part of the journey?
Well, so what happened was as I was just researching, I was still in not even pre-production, even before pre-production. I saw the kids in England running around with these blindfolds. They were able to see and read and do all kinds of stuff with the blindfolds on. And so of course, there's all kinds of things online, as you know. And I said, is this real? Is this not real? I wanted to investigate it. I felt so strongly that those kids in London, outside of London, were doing the real thing. And so I happened to be traveling to Europe. And like I said, we were still like not even in pre-production. And I called them up. At the time, it's Nicola Farmer. She's teaching these kids. And I said, I'm filming this documentary and I want to check it out. So she invited me over and I was blown away by these kids who are able to read, to do all kinds of stuff, run around, play ball, identify objects. Now, so people who are skeptical, I was skeptic in the beginning, not skeptic. I could tell it's possible, but I don't just like wanted to believe it. I wanted to know how and why and how does it work. And so now these kids could not have rehearsed anything because I would pick something up. They didn't know what I was going to pick up. They would see it. I would write on a piece of paper something. They didn't know what I was going to write on a piece of paper and they could see it. And for the folks who think that they're cheating, meaning there's light coming through the blindfold, it's actually not true at all. I can't speak for other groups. I can speak for the groups that I have investigated, that I have researched, that I have seen with my own eyes. I tried the mask myself. It is completely black. You see nothing, absolutely nothing. And so this was mind blowing to just see these kids be able to do all these things with the blindfold. So
Yeah, and so was that some sort of organization that they joined to or something, or the kids? I mean, what?
it's a lady who teaches kids to do that. She's outside of London. And so there are other schools that also do this. Now, each school, they all have their own methodology. So some of them are, they train you. It's more of a based on vibration, like you sense the object and then you identify the object. Others are, it's more about visualization. Other techniques have to do with you feeling that you're outside your body. So there are groups all over Germany, Romania, Russia, the Utah in the US, Mexico, Canada, all over, India. I don't know about India. I've never investigated those. But yeah, so I just thought it was fascinating because think about it. If you can get your brain to do something it's not supposed to do, such as seeing, when you're blindfolded, then it tells you that the power of your intention is so strong that you can get it to do whatever you want. And of course, that also was applied to folks who are blind, folks who had, severe visual impairments. So this tells us that this isn't a game. I mean, this isn't a magic trick. This has some serious implications, and it all has to do with the power of your intention. So
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you so much for that. And I guess, do you apply more of that space? Do you think of being able to use your mind to, or use the power of the mind to tune in to create your reality in a sense? Do you think, or more
yeah,
maybe?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the film shows that you how it's possible for the mind to affect a physical object or substance. So if that is the case, then every time you think, every time you put an intention out there, it is having an effect. And so if you are stuck in your life, if you have an issue or something's going on, is because on some level your subconscious mind is having an effect on your physical reality, because obviously you're stuck, so you're unhappy, right, with whatever situation it is. But your conscious mind saying, I didn't want this, I didn't create myself to be unhappy. So obviously your subconscious has been doing that. And if you catch yourself not being in alignment and being unhappy, and you understand that your thoughts, conscious or unconscious, have been having a real effect, obviously that's your reality, then you can undo it. You can now focus specifically on whatever it is you created consciously or unconsciously and undo it and change it. So that's the idea of the film.
It sounds so easy what you're saying, right? But I don't know. I honestly, I think you can have so much going on sometimes, and you don't actually know what. No answer seems a good answer. Do you know what I mean? And it's so foggy and unclear everything is. That can be hard.
Oh, 1,000%, of course. I mean, that's everyone's situation. We don't have to be and without any money and desperate and sick and having COVID, all kinds of stuff to think that things are overwhelming. It's really all relative. Some people could have everything that we think would make you happy, comfortable, like material comfort, health, relationships, whatever, glamour, whatever you want to say. But if in your mind, you have the belief and you're convinced that you're stuck and unhappy, then no matter what your outer existence is, you are going to still be there. My point being that it's all starts with the mind, and you're unhappy in your mind. And so when there are so many things outside of you that are making you unhappy or confused, like, maybe a relationship situation, money situation, a parent who's sick or whatever, like, so you pile them up, right? But no matter what you do, you cannot change your outside reality if you don't start with the mind. And so you would be amazed that when you shift your perception of what the problem is, it starts to change. So, for example, in a relationship, this is typical because I've been working with hundreds of people for years and years and years and years. And so they say, okay, I'm stuck in this relationship, he does this, he does that, and, this whole thing. And so I said, when was the last time you asked what you are doing and why you are attracting that in your life? And so all of a sudden, the focus is no longer on how I can make that person do what I want them to do, or that my relationship's not working, but rather, what am I creating unconsciously, consciously or unconsciously, that got me into this situation? The minute you do that, it's almost like you bring it back to your ability to create. And so this is not to say that in one day you're going to fix all your problems, but already starting with the fact that, okay, I created this, I can uncreate it, as opposed to that this is not working, that is too hard. This is, this is more, should be an acknowledgement, but not the focus. Does that make sense? And does that help? And so it's a little bit of work. It's a little bit of reprogramming and reshifting, but you will be surprised the minute that you look at how you did this, the person changes. The minute you look at the root cause of why you're attracting material, whatever, you're not attracting material abundance, the way you have created, what is the root cause really underneath all of this? The minute you solve that, this situation outside of you changes.
Yeah, and it's getting to that root cause, isn't it? That's the hard part.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that how do you get to that root cause? I mean, even if you're bluntly honest with yourself, would it make sense if you found the root cause?
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
No. That's yeah.
That was the question. Yeah, that is the problem. Is, for example, sometimes people are sick. They have cancer or whatever, and so they then they get better, but then they get over it. But then a few years later, they have it again somewhere else in the body. This is a typical scenario. Why? Because they haven't resolved the root cause of why they created it in the first place. If you resolve, the minute you resolve the root cause of why you are creating this, then you won't create it again. And so the idea is to know how to tap into your subconscious mind. That's the methodology that I've developed for 20 years. Because when I was younger, if you don't mind, a little bit of a side note, I was 5 years old and I would look at people and I could see the subtle energy, like what was wrong with them, what was going on. And I could see the root cause. Like I would say, well, tomorrow go do this and the problem will go away. Or I want to, or I would make them say something and then the problem would go away. So of course I was 5 years old, I was like doing this spontaneously. But, with time, I realized that, wait, I could see that, but they couldn't see that. So therefore, how can I help people see the root cause themselves, which is tapping into the subconscious belief system? And so that's why it took me 20 years of working in that field and developing a whole methodology to discern and tap into that root cause in your subconscious mind, to be able to get over the problem once and for all. So it's a little bit of training, but once you get it, you know how to do that. And then the root cause could be something in your childhood, but it could be even before you even came. So when it's connected to, your karmic journey, and there's all kinds, so you train yourself to go as far back as you can until you get that root cause and you change it.
That's incredible. What is the website for that type of healing that you're talking about there?
So that's my consciousness work and energy healing. It is CarolineCory.com, Cory, Cory. And so they'll see I have right now, after 20 years, I have a massive library of classes to learn this methodology and actual sessions on different topics. So for example, there is a series on addiction and that I've done years ago. And some people who have been, smoking or drinking for 20 years, they'll do the session even now. And then they will reprogram the root cause and then the addiction goes away. And so it works. If you know the mechanism, it does work. And so, but I also have a lot of free stuff. So people can go to my YouTube channel. I have another, 150 videos of just clearing and reprogramming. So people can start with that because they're free.
And this is a technique that you've developed?
Correct. Because my belief system is that everything is information, meaning your cells are behaving the way they do because it's the information. The DNA is a coded information. It tells the cells, okay, now you behave this way, you're going to give that appearance, your red hair, your blonde, your blue eyes, whatever, but you also have these genetic codes and you have this ability or not this. So basically it's information that the cells respond to. And I notice, because I see the subtle energy very clearly, I notice that thoughts and emotions are also information. And when you're having them, they don't just dissolve. They don't disappear, even though you don't see them. They actually have a coded, I literally can see the geometry of that frequency, and it goes inside the cell. So when I look at someone, I see the information they put in inside the cells. So if I see that, it means that the cell, you didn't start out by being, having this problem or that problem. It came on after a while by you putting these conscious and unconscious information in your cells. After a while, the cell would say, okay, fine. You want me to feel incompetent? Okay, I'm going to be incompetent. You want me to feel like a failure? I will be a failure. So after a while, the cells start to respond to the information you put in. And so if you understand that, you look at the cells and you take out that information because you put it in. Once you take it out, the cell goes right back to its natural spin, its natural frequency, and its natural functioning.
Well, that's incredible. So, how many practitioners after all these years have you got working for you then? Because you can't be doing this all by yourself.
No, exactly. I've trained many, many people, and now I have a lot of students that are excellent. that's the training, is to discern that. How do you discern that you didn't make it up? When I look at your cells, or I look at your spine or whatever, like, how do I know it's not my imagination? That's the first thing, because it's a huge responsibility. And so that's why, there's a whole series on guidance. I mean, where's the guidance coming from? Is it my higher self? Is it a spirit guide? Is it an extraterrestrial? Like, is it my deceased grandmother, like, whispering in my ear? And even if that information comes through, where are they? Like, how is it getting into my brain? And how is my brain deciphering all of this? How do I know? So that was the question that I asked myself from the very beginning when I was younger. I would say, what if I made this up? I'm not going to tell the person until I'm sure. So I kept training myself to kind of know the difference between I made it up and it came to me. So that training, got me to, okay, I can see the difference. So now this is part of the protocol before you begin. You see, it's that sort of specificity that I really, really worked on to make this methodology. So there's tons of people now that I've trained. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And okay, well, yeah, okay, but who, or was there a mentor for yourself then?
Okay, so I never had a human teacher. So I mean, I looked into a couple of classes here and there, but I never went to India. I didn't never follow the guru or anything like that. It is because, again, I'm going back to my 5-year-old experience. So that experience, during that experience, I connected with beings and kind of energy. But they were a group of beings. And I could see that they were sort of my lineage. It's almost like I was on this side of the veil in the human body, and they were on the other side of the veil, but it was the same lineage. And I realized that everybody is like that. So even when you are here, you don't sever that connection. But everybody has their own type of lineage. That's why some people think they're communicating with Pleiadians. Other people think they're communicating with Arcturian. Like, how come we're not all talking to the same guy, Because it's not important to me to know what the Pleiadian is saying to my human journey. It's important to me to maintain the connection with my lineage, because that's where the true guidance is coming from. So anyway,
no,
long story short.
No, long story short, but that's fascinating. And these were sort of what, light beings, do you think, when you were younger, that you had an encounter with, or?
Yeah, they're universal type beings, so they cannot take on a human body because their consciousness is very massive. So they can't kind of shrink into, and sort of a humanoid shape or anything like that. But they have some sort of shape, and they're from very kind of far away in the universe, and I could see that whole thing.
Well, that's why you've done some of the previous documentaries that you've done as well, and we will link those below as well. They're more sort of ET consciousness-based documentaries, but I don't know too much. Well, actually, let me ask you: how many documentaries previous to this one have you done?
Oh, feature length. This is my third. So yeah. So, but the second one, the one before had a bit to do with this, but it was more, again, to bring understanding to what else we're connected to over here.
Well, it's possible then that you're still working with this group or this energy even to this point right now.
Oh, definitely. So that was my point. So since I was 5, because I saw that lineage, and also we were communicating telepathically, so I could see how the information was traveling from their consciousness to mine, and my brain was translating. It's like a zip drive, it's like going zip, and then it would like unzip in my brain, and I would hear it in my human language. And so I realized that's how telepathic communication happens, because the zip drive is universal. It's not English or French or Chinese or whatever. They don't speak like that. So anyway, because of that connection, I saw how communication is transferred and how this was the connection that I needed to maintain, not some extraterrestrial, not, Buddha or whatever, or, you know what I mean? Like, it was so, so, so clear. And that was such a pure, powerful exchange.
I mean, I absolutely. I just think it's incredible what you've done. That creating this healing practitioners and this healing company and this media company that you're doing now. Hats off to you for, seeing through what you've done, because this is no small feat. Do you know what I mean? And I bet there were many times where you thought, what am I doing? How is this ever going to work? But I guess as you got more into your work, that all that kind of stopped, and you realized how powerful the mind was and the thoughts were. And how long was it before, when you first got into healing work, that you really knew that I've got to be careful of my thoughts here?
Oh my God, yes. I'm so glad you brought this up, because as I started to realize that, wait, I'm seeing something that others couldn't see. And then the next day, exactly what I saw happened. Or I saw something, I would hear it in my head, or see it in my head. And the next day it would be on the news. And it would be stuff that I'm not even thinking about, or it's not even my field, or it doesn't even interest me. Or I would see things in the universe. I would see rings over Saturn, and then 3 months later, Cassini, whatever mission, would put out, oh, we just saw the. So because of this, I kept getting validation that I'm not crazy. I went in college, I studied psychology. So I'm trained as a psychologist, but I don't just, it was more like, to make sure like my brain didn't have any sort of anomaly, but it was, you know what I mean? Like, it was, again, what if I made this up? I was so terrified that I wanted to make sure. But when I started getting validation after validation after validation, I would meet somebody, I knew exactly what was going on. And I would tell them, she'll be like, well, how did you know I had a drowning experience when I was 7? Things like that. So anyway, because of this amount of validation, I started to realize, okay, well, this is working. And now that I know, what am I going to do with this, and how am I going to teach it? And so I remember the one time, at the time, a long, long time ago, again, that was before I started going public with all of this and teaching or anything. At the time, my boyfriend, so he was lying down, he had the flu. So he was feeling really, really, really bad. So I'm sitting on the bed and he's lying down with his back to me. And so I thought, how can I make him feel better, And so I just put my hand out like this, and I was literally this far from his back. So I was doing this far from his back, and all of a sudden he screamed. He's like, "Ouch, you're burning me. What are you doing?" And I was like, what just happened here? I said, what do you mean I'm burning you? He said, my back is burning. What did you put on my back? That moment was such like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, let me start taking this very seriously. And so, and I realized also that it wasn't just that, it was thought. I mean, I had a period where I would think it and it would just show, smallest ridiculous things, like I'm driving, I'm, turning around, like I'm looking for a parking spot. I can see exactly where, I just navigate through it. It's exactly how I saw things like that. It sounds silly, but it just kind of, I think it was a period where it was kind of showing me how what you think is. So you better be careful what you think about.
Absolutely. And who would have thought, well, I guess you never considered it too much about that you'd be making a movie that was based around this work. And actually, I've called it a movie there because I look at the production of it and I'm like, yeah. But yeah, a movie documentary about this work. Yeah. Did you at the time?
Yeah, no, well, so what happened, because I started teaching for so long and again having validation, people were really being helped. And so I said, well, not everybody wants to go to a workshop, not everybody wants to read books, not everybody wants to train, you know. And so I thought we need to get this out more in the mainstream, and the best medium obviously is film. And so that's when I started making films about the subjects that I've been, in my life, all my life.
Yeah. Well, you should be so proud, and I know you are proud of yourself, but you should be for what you've produced here. It's really really good, and God, there's just so much we could say about what you've been up to as well. I mean, obviously, that there's so much to your life as well. And we're compressing it here in 40 something minutes, right, of everything that you've gone through. But what do you see as the bigger picture to your work right now as well?
Yeah, again, my work has always been about empowerment. So for example, even when I was helping people heal, it wasn't interesting for me if they kept coming back to me. It was important to me for them to learn how to do it so that they do it on themselves and for others. It wasn't, in fact, it was kind of annoying me when people would always ask me for questions like, what is going to happen with it, or what, or how do I know this, or like guidance about their life. So sometimes, so it wasn't important to me to give them that information, but it was much more rewarding when they started doing it. So that has always been my hope and the mission of my work. But also, very important, is for people to have a similar experience or an understanding as the one I had when I was 5, which is that reconnection with your spiritual divine lineage, because that is the real purpose of being on earth, is reawakening to who you really are, where you came from, the type of energy that you hold. And when you awaken to that, you start to bring it through everything that you do, everything that you say. If you could be doing a podcast, but if I am now connected to that lineage, every word I'm saying carries that component. So that really is my mission, I guess, is really the purpose of my work.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and I think that's so important that you know yeah, we all have the ability, don't we, to tune into that greater part of ourselves. All answers do lie within, even in the most difficult times, right? And that's kind of what you're saying there as well. And we do all, I guess we do all have a group that we're, or something that we're working with. It's like some mediums will say, oh, well, I've got a gatekeeper, between me and whatever this other realm of energy is that it connects back to, or I'm working with a group, or yeah, we've all heard it, haven't we? Within these fields, yeah, and yeah, and when you do connect back to that essence, sometimes it's so loving and wise, isn't it? And it's without judgment and everything else, and it just wants the best for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you know this is your spiritual lineage, because so at 5 years old, it wasn't like seeing a ghost, like the movie Sixth Sense. It was home. It was like, oh my God, thank God, this energy exists somewhere. Because actually, when it happened, it was when I remember it was Christmas Eve, actually. And I was looking around and I was looking at all these adults, like doing the Christmas thing and gifts and stuff. And I was looking at them and thinking, now I'm 5 years old, right? Thinking, oh my God, there is no love here. What does this have to do with Christmas, what they're doing? And these humans don't know about love. And so I'm thinking those things because I'm observing them fussing over silly stuff and arguing, and exactly at that moment is when I had that experience and that connection. And that felt like, oh my God, like unconditional love, like all over. And it felt like this is the real family, if you will. Like, and so because of that, and it felt so familiar. It felt like I know exactly what this is. I know exactly where I came from. I know exactly how this all works. And I'm like 5 years old, right? So because that connection and this stream of consciousness was so comforting and beautiful and loving, I kept it open my whole life.
Yeah, and sometimes, and I guess as well, you can tap into that at any point, which you do, consciously and unconsciously. And it's also a message as well for anyone else that it's there for you as well. Don't forget that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, again, just think about it, that you are on this side of the veil in this human body, and they are still there. You are also still there, a part of your consciousness. So yeah, so you're still there and part of this lineage, and that is never severed.
What do you think about releasing this documentary in this particular time right now, in the times that we live in?
I think it's very timely because, again, it's about showing, demonstrating, even with scientific experiments, that the mind affects your physical reality. And look at what we're doing right now. We're stuck. Our whole life is upside down. We're having to do things very differently. We're forced into new rules and regulations, although not everybody's paying attention to those. But and so now more than ever, how do you still maintain this autonomy, so to speak? How can I still feel good when I have to go out and, like, people force me to wear actually where I am, I've created a really good bubble where I am right now. So I'm barely feeling it, to be honest, but many people are struggling with this, many, and I'm so conscious of that. But at least, you can do some energetic thing. For example, you can create a bubble around you every time you go out, so you can still use your mind and your consciousness to navigate through these things. And sometimes we're forced into situations that may be beneficial in a strange way. So maybe a lot of people are stuck with their kids and their family, in a small space, and maybe you're having to look at, I know many people that are divorcing and other people that are actually gotten closer. And so maybe the relationship is an important component that you need to be looking at right now. For example, other people is something else, it's their work. They lost money. So it's like in your face, and you're having to reassess everything you've been doing and the way you've been doing it. And so I feel, in a strange way, we're living in this weird, uncertain times, but in a strange way, it's always been like that. But it's like it was a fake kind of, or an illusion of, oh, everything is fine. That you get a job, you get a paycheck, you have money, you go on holiday, you get your food at the store. But to me, this is all fake. It's almost like a lot of people, have the wrong jobs, just to pay the rent, as opposed to being happy. We eat the wrong foods. The way we acquire food is just so messed up. It's all packaged and processed. And so I think we were living this big lie, the illusion that we were safe and okay,
Yeah, no, I get you, and for some people it won't affect, and for some people it has affected, and I guess Yeah, I guess not everyone's gonna change overnight their mind on a few things, but for some people it would have been their biggest shake-up. Absolutely.
Yeah, and even on the social issues, everything is coming up now. I mean, all of a sudden, like the race thing, I mean, it's been there forever. All of a sudden, the inequality, all of a sudden, the politics, like who's telling us lie. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like we've been living this big lie, pretending that we
Mm.
have race under control, that we have money under, that we have politics, or we're supposed to believe the doctors, we're supposed to believe these people, or media is doing this. So I think in a strange way, this situation is making the whole system break down to really see the truth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it's not comfortable. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like, ooh, we should, it's weird, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. But when you look at it this way, and especially in the long run, maybe 50 years from now, or, like bird's eye view, maybe we needed that major collapse of this fake system in order for something more truthful, more real to who we really are could emerge.
Well, thank you so much for that. Okay, well, look, I've really appreciated having you on. I just want to, say thank you for what you do as well, and this documentary, it really is, it really is. It's got some amazing, good contributing guests on there as well, and you've got some fantastic names on there. And I just thank you for what you're doing. And your website for the documentary, one more time, is
Superhumanfilm.com.
excellent. Well, Caroline, Cory, just thank you so much for joining us today.
I so appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you. It was great fun.